October 30th is known in many parts of the U.S. as Mischief Night, a time when teenagers often engage in pranks. In the affluent, gated community of Bellhaven, Greenwich, Connecticut, 15-year-old Martha Moxley, a vibrant, popular high school sophomore, joined neighborhood teens for what seemed like a harmless night of fun. That evening, Martha visited the home of the Skakel family, located just across the street from her own. The Skakels were a wealthy, prominent family related to the Kennedys through marriage. Two teenage boys lived there, Tommy Skakel, 17, and Michael Skakel, 15, both of whom had shown romantic interest in Martha. Martha spent time socializing with a group of kids, including the Skakel boys, in and around the Skakel home. Several witnesses later reported that Martha was seen flirting and spending time specifically with Tommy Skakel on the property's driveway. According to testimony and later reconstructions, Martha left the Skakel home around 9:30 to 10 p.m., intending to walk just across the street to her house. It was a short walk, mere yards away, but she never made it home. Sometime shortly after she left, Martha was violently attacked from behind. The weapon was a 6-iron golf club, later traced to a set owned by the Skakel family. She was bludgeoned so brutally that the club shattered. The killer then used a jagged piece of the broken shaft to stab her in the neck. Her pants and underwear had been pulled down, but there was no evidence of sexual assault, adding a sinister and confusing layer to the crime. The motive, whether sexual, jealous, or rage-driven, remained unclear. Several neighbors reported hearing dog barks, screams, and strange noises around the time of the attack, especially between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. However, no one investigated at the time, as it was common to hear noises on Mischief Night. At approximately 12:30 p.m. the next day, October 31st, Halloween, Martha's mother, Dorothy Moxley, became increasingly worried after her daughter hadn't returned. She contacted friends and eventually the police. Just hours later, Martha's lifeless body was discovered beneath a large pine tree in her own backyard. She was partially obscured by the tree's low branches. The sight was horrific. Her head had been caved in, the broken golf club lay nearby, and the scene showed signs of a violent, personal attack. The murder stunned the quiet, secure community of Bellhaven. Not only had a young girl been killed just steps from her front door, but it quickly became clear that the killer was likely someone she knew and trusted. This tragic night would become the cornerstone of a decades-long mystery filled with false leads, media scrutiny, and eventually, accusations aimed at members of one of America's most powerful families. When investigators arrived at the scene in the backyard of the Moxley residence on the afternoon of October 31st, 1975, they were met with a shocking and disturbing sight. The brutality of the attack suggested a rage-filled and deeply personal crime, one not typical of random violence. Martha Moxley's body was found under a large pine tree in her backyard, partially concealed by low-hanging branches. Her pants and underwear had been pulled down to her ankles, a chilling detail that initially suggested a possible sexual assault. However, a medical examination later confirmed that no sexual assault occurred. This raised suspicions that the attacker may have staged the scene, possibly to mislead investigators or to humiliate the victim post-mortem. This aspect of the crime added to the psychological complexity of the killer, pointing to someone who not only wanted Martha dead, but also intended to degrade or punish her in some way. Near the body, detectives found fragments of a broken golf club. The club was identified as a No. 6 Tony Pennebrand golf club, a high-end model at the time. Investigation traced the club back to a set owned by the Skakel family, Martha's neighbors, and the last people she was known to be with that night. Martha was first struck multiple times in the head with a club. The force was so severe that the club snapped in two. The broken shaft, now a jagged, sharp instrument, was then used to stab her in the neck, likely after she had already collapsed or was dying. Forensics suggested that the attack was not only excessively violent, but done with such force that it likely came from someone young, strong, and emotionally driven. Despite the presence of the murder weapon and a nearby blood-stained path, no usable fingerprints or DNA evidence led to a conclusive suspect at the time. This was the mid-1970s, long before modern DNA profiling, which meant that despite clear physical evidence, police were limited in how they could process and link it to a suspect. As a result, the weapon's origin, the Skakel household, became a critical lead, but not enough for an arrest in 1975. Combined with the suggestive but ultimately non-sexual nature of the scene, the evidence pointed toward a deeply personal motive, possibly rooted in jealousy, rejection, or youthful rage. The investigation into the murder of Martha Moxley quickly turned to the people closest to her, particularly the Skakel family, who lived just across the street in the exclusive Belhaven community. The Skakels were not only neighbors, but also part of the American aristocracy, related to the powerful Kennedy family through marriage. The Skakel household was wealthy, but deeply dysfunctional. The family was led by Rushton Skakel, a widowed father of 7 children, and heir to the Great Lakes carbon fortune. After the death of their mother, the children, including Tommy Skakel, 17, and Mikey Skakel, 15, were largely left unsupervised. Their father was often away, and they were raised in a home of privilege, but chaos. The boys were known for their rebellious behavior, substance use, and lack of discipline. Martha Moxley was known to spend time frequently with the Skakel children. Both Tommy and Michael were interested in her romantically. According to Martha's diary entries, she seemed to favor Tommy, writing about his affectionate behavior and flirtations. This may have caused jealousy or rivalry between the two brothers. On the night of the murder, October 30th, 1975, Martha was seen spending time with Tommy Skakel in the Skakel driveway around 9:30 to 10 p.m. According to Tommy, the two shared a brief romantic encounter. He claimed they kissed, and then she left for home. Based on witness statements and timeline analysis, Tommy was the last known person to see Martha alive, making him the initial prime suspect. However, inconsistencies in Tommy's statements were not enough for an arrest at the time, especially without forensic evidence to tie him to the scene. That same night, the Skakel family had hired a new live-in tutor, Kenneth Littleton, who had just moved into the house earlier that day. Police began to suspect Littleton as well, reasoning that he was a new and unknown adult in the area, possibly trying to avoid attention. However, there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. He cooperated with authorities and passed initial interviews. Over time, he began to show signs of mental decline, reportedly becoming paranoid and erratic, which some felt was indicative of guilt. Still, no charges were ever filed against him. Despite circumstantial suspicion on both Tommy and Littleton, the Greenwich police lacked confessions, witnesses, forensic evidence. With no direct link to the murder, and in an era before DNA evidence, the case went cold for decades. For more than 20 years, the murder of 15-year-old Martha Moxley remained a painful mystery in the quiet Connecticut suburb of Belhaven, with no arrests, no resolution, and only lingering suspicion, particularly surrounding the Skakel family. Despite early polygraph tests, interviews, and the presence of a weapon traced to the Skakels, investigators in the 1970s and 1980s were unable to gather enough solid evidence to make a formal arrest. The case went cold. In the early 1990s, the case gained renewed public attention, not because of new evidence initially, but due to media interest and Kennedy family intrigue. In 1991, William Kennedy Smith, a Kennedy cousin, was tried and acquitted in a Florida rape case. Around that time, an anonymous tip suggested that Smith had attended a party in Greenwich the night Martha was murdered. Although there was no factual basis for this claim, it reopened public interest in Martha's death and reignited speculation about Kennedy family connections to the Skakels. This rumor forced investigators and journalists to re-examine the players involved, including Michael Skakel, who had largely remained in the background during early investigations. Renowned crime journalist and author Dominic Dunn, father of murdered actress Dominique Dunn, wrote about the Moxley case for Vanity Fair. He became deeply involved in publicizing the injustice of the Unsolved case and put pressure on the Greenwich police for inaction. Dunn was convinced that the Skakel name and wealth shielded them from proper scrutiny. In 1998, Mark Furman, the former LAPD detective from the O.J. Simpson trial, wrote the book Murder in Greenwich. Furman dug into old records, autopsy reports, and police interviews, and built a compelling case that Michael Skakel was the true killer. Oh, he pointed to inconsistencies in Michael's alibi. Oh, he also highlighted Michael's erratic behavior, substance abuse, and later confessions made to classmates at a reform school. Though controversial for his role in the Simpson trial, Furman's book put a national spotlight back on Michael Skakel and the police's failure to act. Furman's findings and the wave of public attention finally prompted Connecticut authorities to take action. In 1998, a rare one-man grand jury was convened to investigate the case. Dozens of witnesses testified under oath, including people from Michael's past, some of whom revealed shocking admissions he made over the years. One recalled Michael saying, "I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy." Others said he confessed to climbing a tree near Martha's window the night of the murder and masturbating, destroying his previously stated alibi. By 2000, based on the grand jury's findings and revived interest thanks to media efforts, Michael Skakel was indicted for the murder of Martha Moxley. After decades of silence, media pressure, and new testimonies gathered during a one-man grand jury investigation, Michael Skakel was formally indicted in January 2000 for the 1975 murder of Martha Moxley. At the time of the murder, Michael had been just 15 years old, but due to the severity of the crime and the fact that he was being tried decades later, prosecutors charged him as an adult. Michael Skakel's trial began in May 2002 in Norwalk, Connecticut. It drew intense media coverage, largely due to his Kennedy family ties, the case's long unsolved status, the troubling details of the murder itself. Changing alibis. Michael initially said he was at a cousin's house watching TV during the time of the murder, but later accounts had him climbing a tree outside Martha's window and returning home around midnight. Confessions to peers. Former classmates from a Maine boarding school testified that Michael had confessed to killing Martha, saying things like, "I am going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy." The golf club. While no DNA was recovered, the murder weapon was tied directly to a golf club set owned by the Skakel family. Despite the lack of direct forensic evidence, the circumstantial evidence and confessions were enough to sway the jury. In June 2002, Michael Skakel was found guilty of Martha Moxley's murder. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. In a stunning development, in October 2013, a Connecticut judge overturned Skakel's conviction, ruling that he did not receive a fair trial. The judge found that Michael's defense attorney, Mickey Sherman, had been ineffective. He failed to properly investigate or call alibi witnesses. He did not challenge certain prosecution claims, weakening Skakel's defense. As a result, the court ruled that Skakel had been denied his constitutional right to effective legal counsel. Michael was released from prison on a $1.2 million bond in November 2013 after serving over 11 years behind bars. The Connecticut Supreme Court reinstated the conviction in 2016 in a close 4-3 vote, arguing that the original trial had been fair enough and the ruling to overturn it was incorrect. This decision briefly placed Michael back in legal jeopardy. However, in 2018, the same court reversed itself in a 4-3 decision, this time with a new justice, ruling again that Michael's lawyer had failed to provide adequate defense, which invalidated the original conviction. Michael Skakel was fully cleared of the 2002 conviction, though this did not mean he was declared innocent. In October 2020, Connecticut state prosecutors announced they would not retry Michael Skakel for the murder of Martha Moxley. The passage of time, over 45 years since the murder. Unreliable witness memories. A loss of potential witnesses and physical evidence. The uncertainty of securing a conviction again. This marked the official end of the legal case, with Michael Skakel walking free and the murder of Martha Moxley left legally unresolved, though many still believe he was responsible. The Moxley family, especially Martha's mother Dorothy, expressed disappointment but accepted the prosecutor's decision. Public opinion remains divided. Some believe justice was served in 2002. Others believe the legal process ultimately failed Martha. Michael Skakel has maintained his innocence, but never offered a clear explanation of his movements the night of the murder.